This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad with daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner. It's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information.
Yeah, I just think there were some guys that I was interested in. They had some blogs, and then they had Twitter accounts where they put even more information. So that's when I got onto Twitter. And then, I found the original Vance, and he was talking about Latin America. And I think Vance inspired a lot of guys. And then Jake the Nomad, he appeared. So then I was reading a whole bunch of his stories, and just a whole bunch of guys just started putting up information, and they really inspired me. And we also just started exchanging information. I really wasn't, because I really didn't know what information people wanted. I felt like people like Vance and Jake were putting up information that was way better than any information that I had. So yeah, that's basically how I got into traveling Latin America, was mostly because of Vance and then the guys on that forum that I talked about, and maybe a few other guys that had been down to Latin America.
Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Profe Kyle. He is a Canadian English teacher for the Spanish-speaking market. He has 150,000 subscribers on YouTube. So, Mr. Profe Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Vance, for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to anybody else who's listening.
Absolutely. And for the audience that is listening, apologies if I sound a bit groggy. It's like 8 a.m. for me in Mexico, Pacific Coast, Mexico. You're what, like 4 hours ahead in Argentina?
Yeah, I was looking up the time for you because, I woke up this morning too, and I was, just lazy Sunday morning doing stuff. And then I remembered at, 11 in the morning, oh yeah, you got that interview with Vance, so you make sure you don't forget about it. So I was looking up the time in Mexico, and I didn't know if you were in Mexico City or if you were in the Pacific Coast. So yeah, I was a bit worried that, and the time changed too, so I was worried that we were going to get our times mixed up. But yeah, I'm in Argentina right now, so the time currently is 1:18 in the afternoon in Buenos Aires.
That's lovely. I think that's one of the low-key benefits about Argentina and Brazil is it's like 2 hours ahead of New York time. And so, if the markets open at 9:30, it's really 11:30. In Brazil, Argentina, it's like a nice sleep-in level.
Well, I think it depends on your point of view, because I love waking up early, and at the same time, because I teach English, and my classes usually in Argentina, they end at 11:30 p.m. Mondays to Thursdays. So basically, I'm not going to bed until 12:30, 1 in the morning. And I like my 8 hours of sleep, and it's very, very difficult to wake up early if you're going to bed at 1 in the morning. So I think, if you're a trader, there's a benefit of Argentina is the time difference. But if you're somebody else like myself who has a schedule like I do, then I always feel like crap when I wake up at 9:30 in the morning or 10 in the morning. I feel like I'm lazy and I need to be doing something already for 3 hours.
Mm. So tell us a little bit more about what you have going on. So you have the YouTube channel, which has been around for many years now, and you're giving like private one-on-one lessons as well, or group lessons, or give us like the span of activities that you do.
Mhm. Well, maybe I could talk a little bit about my story quick. I could talk about that for sure. But I began going to Latin America. Well, my first time in Latin America was 2015. And I just graduated university. Well, I guess I hadn't just graduated university. I graduated in, I think, 2012. And during that time, I worked as a
Where'd you go, by
construction.
the way? Just curious.
Oh, yeah. I went to my first trip.
No,
Uh,
sorry. What university did you go to? Because
wait, yeah, university. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know that Vance likes to keep things private, but everybody knows my face, so I can't really keep myself too anonymous. But in my case, uh, I'm an open book. I can't hide from anybody. So I went to the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. I was there for 4.5 years, and really dumb, but I'm from the countryside in Canada, and I was always just the smartest kid in my class. And in a way, I got my brain washed by my teachers and my parents because nobody else in my family had ever gone to university. And they just told me, "Oh, you're smart. You got to go to university." And at the end of my high school, yeah, at the end of high school, I was trying to figure out what to study. And I got into politics at the time. I was reading books about Justin Trudeau, Canadian. Well, yeah. I think Vance knows about Justin, not Justin Trudeau. Sorry, his father, Pierre Trudeau. So I was reading about Pierre Trudeau. I was a bit of a socialist back then as well. So I was reading biographies about Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, all that stuff. And so I was just really into politics, and my math grades weren't that great. So I didn't really think I could go into architecture or engineering. So, and at that time, of course, in the Canadian American culture, they're always just talking about follow your passion, follow your dreams, which, of course, for guys on
Do an
this side,
arts degree.
yeah, exactly. So that's what happened. I decided I love politics. I'm going to study political science. And one day I'm going to become an ambassador for Canada somewhere in the world. I'm going to speak many languages. Everything's going to turn out okay. And my mother, bless her soul, beautiful woman, maybe not classical school smart lady, but when it comes to street smarts and intuition, she definitely has it. She would keep on asking me, "Are you sure you want to study political science? What kind of a job is there after political science?" And I just kept on telling her, "Mom, you don't understand. I'm passionate about this. If I have passion, then everything's going to work out. I'm going to be successful."
Yeah.
Fast
So
forward.
political science,
Yeah,
UBC.
yeah,
So I was gonna about to do the fast forward for you. Do we?
yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, fast forward 4.5 years, typical humanities graduate working as a waiter, bartender in a restaurant. Uh, And when I finished, well, I met my first Mexican when I was in university. My first year, first semester, one of my dorm mates, I don't know what the proper term for it is. He was a Mexican from Mexico City. So he was my first introduction to Mexicans. And I went to some salsa
Durango Rumi.
classes. It wasn't my room, but he's across the hall. Yeah, I just went to hang out with him. Anybody who
Hmm.
knows Mexico, I think you know Vance. Have you ever tried that one push pop candy that Mexicans have? That's a little bit spicy. It's kind of like
Uh,
tamarindo. If you haven't
yeah.
tried it, you should
There's a
try.
bunch. There's a bunch of
Yeah, yeah.
similar ones, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that was the first thing that got me a little bit hooked on Latino culture, Mexican culture in this case, was that he let me try his tamarindo spicy push pop candy. And I was like, "Oh, this is really exotic." And then from there, we just kept on talking to each other. We would go to taquerias in Vancouver. And then I was taking salsa classes at the university. And that's where I met my first girlfriend, who was also Chilanga. She was a Mexican. So basically, I was with her for 3 years. She also introduced me more and more to the Latin American culture. So by the time I entered university, I was really well versed compared to 99.9% of Americans and Canadians in Latin American culture. But I still didn't speak Spanish. So after I finished university, my goal was I want to study architecture. Again, maybe a little bit silly, but my goal was I want to study architecture, but I don't want to be silly again. I don't want to be getting a student loan. So I'm going to save up a whole bunch of money. I did. So I saved up about $20,000, Canadian dollars in this case, working as a bartender, as a waiter.
This
And
is like 2014ish.
yeah, that'd be 2014ish, exactly. So Vancouver, about a year, working as a bartender, as a waiter, basically full time, making money with tips. And I went to, yeah, I booked my first trip by myself. I've been to Latin America before, but this is my first trip by myself, surviving by myself. And I booked a flight to Puerto Vallarta. I had made a connection with a Mexican girl that was living in Vancouver, and she had an architecture friend who was building a boutique hotel in Puerto Vallarta. So just through her connection, she told me that I could stay for free in this boutique hotel in Puerto Vallarta while her friend, this architect, was building this boutique hotel. So I said, okay, yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to live the gringo dream of just being lazy on the beach, drinking Coronas and, flirting with girls that I see on the beach, on the boardwalk. So I do
Right.
that.
You had 20 grand to blow.
Yeah, 20 grand to blow. I was already planning on beginning to teach English, but I was planning on basically taking my time, doing a bit of traveling, seeing the Mayan and Aztec pyramids, and I was going to go down to Colombia. My plan was, I think at that time, the original Vance, he was already posting stuff. So I think he was also my big inspiration. The original Vance, he had a whole bunch of city guides.
That's cool. So you knew about My Latin Life pretty early on, like kind of from the beginning, huh?
I don't Yeah, I'm trying to think back because I was on Twitter. Why was I on? I don't even remember why I was on Twitter. I still love Twitter. I don't know why I was attracted to Twitter. Yeah, I just think there were some guys that I was interested in. They had some blogs, and then they had Twitter accounts where they put even more information. So that's when I got onto Twitter. And then yeah, I found the original Vance, and he was talking about Latin America. And I think Vance inspired a lot of guys. And then Jake the Nomad, he appeared. So then I was reading a whole bunch of his stories and yeah, just a whole bunch of guys just started putting up information, and they really inspired me. And we also just started exchanging information. I really wasn't because I really didn't know what information people wanted. I felt like people like Vance and Jake were putting up information that was way better than any information that I had. So yeah, that's basically how I got into traveling Latin America, was mostly because of Vance and then the guys on that forum that I talked about, and maybe a few other guys that had been down to Latin America.
That's awesome. I guess things kind of came full circle, and now you're guesting on the My Latin Life podcast many years
Mhm.
later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was destiny. It was destiny. That's what God set out for me.
So I imagine you did like a lot of odd jobs and stuff along the way until you kind of found your niche. But just to kind of give us the condensed version of that, how did you start the teaching English thing, and how did you get started on YouTube, and how long did it take to sort of build the snowball and build the momentum where you said like, okay, this is going to kind of work long term?
Yeah. So basically, I went on to Latin America. I knew I wanted to start working eventually. Yeah, as I told you guys, I I went to the beach, but I'm not really much of a beach person. I'm from Alberta, Canada. There's no beaches. I was convinced by other people that live in, Florida, California, that the best thing in the world is a beach. But I listened to the interview that you did with Stakes is High about,
Hmm.
living in Florianopolis. Yeah, I completely agree with him. Same sentiment. Just when I'm at the beach, I feel like I don't get any work done. I feel lazy, and I guess as a descendant of Protestant Canadians that worked a farm after moving to Canada from Sweden and Norway. I don't really understand the point of drinking a beer on the beach. I understand for other guys it's different, but for me, I was incredibly bored. So I packed my bags after a week, even though I had free rent in Puerto Vallarta, which for many people would be the dream situation. And I went to Guadalajara. I said, I don't care if I have enough money to blow on alcohol and partying. I'm just bored. So went to Guadalajara and I got a job teaching English. Now at that, I went to Guadalajara and I guess that gringo hard work. I just started knocking on doors. I would go onto Google, look up English institutes, and I would just hello, well, in Spanish, of course. Like, I'm a Canadian. I'm here in Guadalajara. I'm interested in teaching English. I'm wondering if there's any way that I could, start getting experience. And a lot of them just blew me off. I think I probably went to, I'm going to say, 7 different institutes. And yeah, they all blew me off until I went to one institute called, maybe I shouldn't say the name. I guess I'll keep it anonymous. But it was basically a Canadian English learning center. I'll say that. It's not the real name, but basically it was a Canadian uh, English teaching institute. So went there. They gave me a job as under the table, so they paid me under the table. And my bosses there were basically one old, grumpy but funny. I think it was American guy, and his subordinate was this farmer from Indiana who didn't speak any Spanish, even though he'd been living in Guadalajara for 3 or 4 years. So just a strange assortment of tapatillos and gringos at that institute. And I think I was making 50 pesos per hour. I can't remember. It was a really, really low salary. But at that point, I had enough money to spend and I just wanted work experience and I wanted something to do because I was just bored, sitting around doing nothing. So that's how I started teaching English. Went down to Colombia. I wanted to be more professional. So I took the CELTA CELTA program, CELTA certificate program in International House in Bogota. At that time, it was in La Candelaria, one of the nicest buildings in Candelaria. Now it's moved to a different part of Bogota. So I did that program for 1 month. It was really intense. Basically taught me the basics of teaching English in a professional way. But before that, I was in Cartagena because there was a girl that I was seeing. So I'd been in Cartagena for, I think, 2 weeks before going to Bogota and doing the program. And I really liked her. Uh, I guess she opened my eyes to basically how a woman should treat a man. Maybe some people don't like how that's said. I think the guys that listen to this will understand what I'm talking about. But maybe for somebody who's a follower of mine, they might think, what do you mean by that? But, just Latinas know how to treat men. So she'd really opened my eyes to basically making me feel like I'm worth something. I didn't really feel like I was worth something when I was in Canada and the United States. And because of her, she was just graduating from university, and she took me to a university and she introduced me to the director of the English language program at the university. And I told him, hey, I'm Canadian. He was also Canadian. And he told me, after you finish your CELTA program, if you want a job, I can probably get you a job here at the university. Now, I think a lot of guys on Twitter that follow you, Vance, they know that Cartagena isn't the dream city that many people in the past have made it out to be. So I kind of knew that back in 2015 that, oh my God, this city is chaotic. This city is hot. They say that there's lots of parties, but I go downtown and it's just full of prostitutes. I really don't know where these parties are. I wasn't a huge fan of the city. I was a huge fan of the girl that was in the city that was, you know, showing me around and basically making me feel good about myself. But besides that, I really didn't like the city. So my plan wasn't to go back to Cartagena, but I really couldn't find a good paying job at that time relative to the wage I was expecting in Colombia. So the best paying job I could find was at this university. So I signed a contract, actually as a volunteer. So technically, volunteers should be being paid uh, very little. But it's kind of funny that a volunteer teaching English was making more money than most English teachers could make in Colombia. So yeah, I did that for 10 months, basically, I think 2 semesters at the university as a private university in Cartagena. Now, Cartagena, as I just said, is chaotic. It's crazy. If you go outside the walled city, it's just, yeah. If you've ever been outside the walled city in Cartagena, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just chaos. It's hot, noisy, and I was taking the buseta. The busetas are the really small buses that are on the coast of Colombia. So I was taking the buseta every day to go to and from work. And there's always these stories about these young costeño kids that would just come onto the bus with a knife and steal everybody's cell phone. So I was every day going to and from work just thinking that this could be the day that some young kid comes on with a knife and starts robbing people. You see, never really felt safe. So I liked the teaching. I liked the atmosphere of teaching at the university. I liked my students, but I didn't want to be in Cartagena, and I didn't want to be dealing with that level of insecurity anymore. So I told myself, you're going to go back to Canada. You're going to, try to find some way to make money online so that you can live in nice neighborhoods in Latin America. Because I love Latin America, but I did not want to be living in Estrato Dos, of a Colombian city, for example,
Can I
because
ask a
it's
quick
horrible.
question about the estratos?
Yeah.
I'll show my lack of knowledge here, but how
Yeah.
are the stratos just in Medellin or in Bogota, or
It's
is it like really every city in Colombia follows the same pattern?
I believe it's all Colombian cities. I think it's a nationwide system. I think you understand how it works, Vance. Just basically they're trying to subsidize poor people so they don't have to pay as much for electricity and stuff like that. But I think nowadays it's also a tool that Colombians use to basically define who is upper class, who is middle class, who is lower class. Yeah, it's kind of in a way the caste system that the conquistadors implemented in Latin America more or less disappeared, but with this estrato system, it's kind of like it still exists in a way.
I never hear the estrato system mentioned when it comes to the coast. I always kind of hear it with like Medellin and like mountainous places. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it's in Cartagena. Like it's been a long time since I live in Cartagena, but I remember when I was looking for a place to live when I got that contract. Uh, I just remember hearing, okay, like this neighborhood is a Strato Cuatro, and it's in between these two neighborhoods, which are Strato Dos and Strato Uno. So just make sure you don't go outside the neighborhood because it's a little bit dangerous. So yeah, I'm pretty in Cartagena at least. They had a Stratos because when I was looking for apartments, they would always talk about. Stratos with
Yeah.
the neighborhoods. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Mhm.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sidetracked you a bit.
Uh, yeah. So yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this because you wanted the short version. But yeah, so I went back to Canada, and I think I went back in 2016. So for anybody who is in the making money online game, you kind of know that there's waves of trends. So I think right now it's kind of like marketing agencies. That's the big one right now. But at that time, it was drop shipping. I think there's a guy named Johnny FD. I found a video of his when I was in, because I went back to Canada. I didn't know how to make money online. So I was trying to look for ways to make money online. And I came across this video of a guy named Johnny FD. And he said he was making money with drop shipping. And yeah, I think most guys know what drop shipping is. Basically, you have a store online, but you don't have inventory. So you sell and then a warehouse somewhere else in China or Canada, United States, they ship out the product that somebody bought. So I bought a $2,000 course. Actually, I didn't buy it because I came back from Colombia and I was broke. So uh, kind of shames me to admit it, but my mom, she bought me this course. I was like, Mom, I'm trying to make money. And she's like, okay, I'll buy this course for you. So anyway, she bought me this course. And I was at home on the family farm and I was doing this course. And I did that course for about 1 year. My first store was selling poker tables, drop shipping style. It was a good introduction to business. I had to call suppliers. I had to call FedEx for shipping, and I learned a whole bunch of things about how businesses actually work. So I never really made any money with drop shipping, but at the same time, I learned how a business works. So my first business was was selling poker tables, and then I tried a second business with another guy named Kyle from California selling Western horse supplies online. That didn't work out very well either. And then I was kind of good at Shopify, so I found a girl from Cartagena, just a friend of a friend, and she had clothing, kind of like the original Vance. I think he started a store in Lima selling clothes. I think I had a similar experience where I always saw these women in Colombia and Latin America selling clothing on their Instagrams. So I thought, how about I use my experience with Shopify and I try to make one of these women more successful by having a good website. So basically, I made a website for her. That didn't pan out either. I think in the middle of this process of experimenting with e-commerce and drop shipping, I finally got a job teaching English because I did want to teach English again. It just when I did interviews for the institutes in Latin America, the pay was horrible. It was way worse than what I was making as a volunteer in Cartagena. And not only that, but if they offered you a job in Monterrey, the salary was really low, and they expected you to wear a suit, and they also expected you to be taking a bus and going to these random factories on the outskirts of the city to teach English, and then you'd have to take a bus again or an Uber, which was with your salary, it was really expensive. You'd have to go to the other side of the city and teach another company English. So it just seemed ridiculous. So that's when I started getting into the e-commerce and the drop shipping. But finally, I was able to start teaching English again with Open English. So I don't know if there's any gringos that know what Open English is, but basically it's the largest English teaching institute, online English teaching institute for Latin Americans. So I
Okay.
got a job with them, and yeah, I was living on the family farm, so I didn't have to pay rent. So I think I was making $10 an hour for each class I taught, which is not a lot, but it was enough to support myself. And while I was teaching Open English, I just remember the students were so surprised at how much they learned in one of my classes, and I realized that most English teachers in Latin America are useless, and most institutes have a horrible methodology. So I just said, okay, I'm going to start making some really simple videos for all these students on Open English that are in my classes, just so they have a little bit extra help because it's obvious that they're basically treading water learning English with Open English. And maybe if they have my videos, they're going to start making actual progress learning the language. So I started making videos for Facebook, started to get a little bit of traction on Facebook. And then one of my followers said, hey, you should start a YouTube channel. So basically, I started a YouTube channel. I started making a little bit longer videos for YouTube. And then I also started an Instagram account. And then one of my YouTube videos, which was basically how to stop thinking in English, no, how to stop thinking in Spanish when you're speaking in English, it blew up. I think it was like August 2017. I think it blew up. And all of a sudden, I had all these new subscribers on YouTube. And not only that, my father is a typical Canadian father. I'm not too sure about you, Vance, or the other guys listen to this, but I think gringo fathers are famous for not having a great connection with their kids. And my father, I never really had a good connection with him. He never really told me if I was doing something good, if I was doing something bad. He never punished me, but at the same time, he never gave me any love, any support. So basically, everything I learned as a man, I learned basically from other guys on Twitter and social media, whether that's good, whether that's bad. It's this kind of situation right now for a lot of gringo guys. So the only time that I've really heard my father say something positive about me was after teaching a class on open English. He never told me because he always tells things to my mother, and my mother tells me what my father said about me. It's just how it works for whatever reason in gringo families. Well, at least in my family. So my mother told me that while I was teaching, my father heard me and told my mother, you know what? I don't know what Kyle is saying because he's speaking Spanish, but you can tell by just his charisma, his confidence, that he's really good at teaching English. So it's the first time that my father had ever told me that I was good at anything in my life. So because of that, because of my one video blowing up on YouTube, and just it seemed like there was a niche, there was a market for Latinos who basically want to learn English well. I, I put aside all the e-commerce, all the drop shipping, and I told myself I'm putting all my energy into teaching English and building courses for Latinos. And
Mhm.
so
And what
that's
year
what
was this that you really started putting all your energy
I, th-
into it?
I think that would be, I think 27, I think 2017. Like 2017 was the year where I really just said, yeah, no more getting sidetracked with drop shipping or other get rich quick schemes that Ty Lopez or somebody else is marketing on YouTube. You're
Mm.
just going to focus on teaching English, creating courses, and having the best methodology for Spanish speakers who want to learn English. And yeah, I think that's more or less my condensed version. And just over time, I've gained followers. I'm not the most popular guy that teaches English on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook because I'm a little bit serious. The original Vance, he kind of made fun of. And I think a lot of the guys that listen to these podcasts, they kind of know the guys that I'm going to be referring to right now. But those gringos that go down to Mexico, they become the Mexican gringo. Those gringos that go down to Colombia, they become the Colombian gringo.
Hmm.
I'm not as popular as those guys, but at the same time, I don't like to lie. And I think a lot of guys agree that those guys, lie about saying, oh, Mexico is a perfect country. And oh, anything bad that gringos say about Mexico is pure racism. And I don't know if I completely agree with that. So I think because I'm a little bit serious, I don't smile as much. I always get Latinos telling me, Profe, you need to smile more. Latinas like it when men smile. I'm Canadian. Like I'm not born to have a fake smile on my face. So I got to be a little bit serious. But yeah, so over time, just with hard work and posting content basically every week and teaching group classes, and then eventually having my own self-learning courses. Yeah, I built up my audience. I built up my brand. I built up my company. Uh, I wanted to be more successful. I'm definitely not as successful as a lot of guys that I follow on Twitter, but at the same time, I try not to get distracted with with people who are doing better than me. I guess one example, actually, I remember uh, when I started doing this, Jake was struggling at the time. I think at that time he had a selling gringo apparel for gringos that like Latin America, and I know he was struggling too. And then all of a sudden
Really? I haven't seen this apparel. Oh
yeah,
man.
well, I don't know if I don't know if he doesn't want to talk about it, or if he does want to talk about it, but I just remember, I think it was like 2017 or something. Like that was during his, you know, just getting by phase in Latin America, living in hostels or whatnot. And yeah, I think he started like a website or selling t-shirts basically for gringos that had like, the gringo culture that we share on Twitter all the time, but having apparel for it. And I remember he was struggling too. And then he blew up, I think, in like something. I don't think he's ever talked about what blew up for him, but something blew up for him and he got a whole bunch of success. So obviously, sometimes it's hard for me because I know there's other guys that were in the same situation as me, 6 years ago, and now they're doing very well. They're buying apartments, they have second citizenships, and all this stuff. And then there's me. I just keep on telling myself, okay, you have an audience, check. All right, you're making money, check. You just got to find a way to scale. So I think that's my biggest problem right now is just finding ways to scale the company and try to help as many Latinos as possible. But it's the market that was originally a market that didn't really have that many options is now a market which has a whole bunch of different people teaching English. So I think it's getting a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, I look at a lot of the people teaching English to Latinos, and they don't market themselves very well, or they don't have any courses, they don't know how to sell. So I just tell myself, focus on your marketing, focus on the quality of your courses, and you just got to figure out how to scale. And that's what I tell myself. And yeah, that's basically the shortened version of my story. Probably a little bit long, but I don't know. There's a lot of details in it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely appreciate you sharing that. Um, Yeah, now we can start getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty about business models and lots of stuff. We can kind of jump around in terms of the conversation, but I guess I'll kind of go back to my original question. So I just
Yeah,
wanted to get an understanding of everything that you have going on right now, because
yeah,
I'm sure I might be missing something. So you have the Profe Kyle YouTube channel, which is
hmm
great.
yeah.
You have courses. You have multiple courses. Are they all under the Profile name and on your website?
Yeah, exactly. So the website is profical.com. And so I have, I think, six different self-learning courses on my website. And then basically to support myself, because just selling self-learning courses, I still haven't figured out how to support myself completely, just
Yeah,
selling
probably a lot of
those.
ups and downs on that. And then yeah, so
Yeah.
what else?
Yeah. So basically to support myself while I live in Latin America and as I keep figuring things out, I have the group classes. So I teach basically, I have three different groups of people, of students. So right now I have I have 27 students that I teach in group classes. So I have six classes every week that I teach, and that basically supports myself while I'm developing everything else in the business.
Sweet. And is that like fully through your own channels, or is that like through some sort of larger English learning company?
No, I think like another big influence for me, and I think a lot of guys that listen to you and a lot of guys in Latin America was that one book called Sovereign Individual.
Yep.
And for me, I guess as I don't know, I think we're classical gringos where for us the biggest thing is freedom, and I don't want to be dependent on one platform in order to make money. And like for example, the one common platform that a lot of guys use for e-commerce, and I don't think it's a bad thing, is ClickFunnels. But back when I first started, it was really expensive. I think you had to pay like $150 per month for ClickFunnels, and I thought, I'm not making enough money for ClickFunnels. So then I just maybe that pioneer spirit, I started to figure things out. So what I use for my website, just maybe somebody's interested. So right now I use WordPress and I use Thrive Themes as my page builder. Well, Thrive Themes has a whole bunch of different plugins, but basically my page builder for WordPress is Thrive Themes. And they released, I think, a few years ago, something called Thrive Apprentice, which is basically and a way to create a learning platform on your WordPress website. So I use that basically to sell my self-learning courses. So yeah, everything that I have is on WordPress. It's on profical.com. There's not really any extra platforms that I use. The only ones that I use would be for payment processing, and that would be Thrivecart. I don't know if everybody's heard about Thrivecart or not, but Thrivecart costs $500. You pay once, and then you have a payment processor that you can use for life. And in some ways, it's simple, but at the same time, it does everything that you need to sell things online. And of course, with Thrivecart, you need to have a Stripe account or a PayPal account. So I have Stripe and PayPal connected to Thrivecart. So basically, WordPress, using Thrive Themes as my page builder, and then Thrivecart and Stripe for payment processing. And then for email marketing, and again, this comes down to the sovereign individual having freedom. If you don't own your list or your subscribers, then you're screwed if you get kicked off one of the social media platforms. So I have my email list on GetResponse. I switched recently, about 6 months ago, I think, from MailChimp, which I was using for a long time, but MailChimp was just getting ridiculous and a whole bunch of bullshit happening with MailChimp. So I made the jump. I was trying to decide between Klaviyo and GetResponse. I decided on GetResponse because it had everything I needed. And I'm kind of e-commerce, but not completely e-commerce. And GetResponse also has the ability to do webinars, which is something I want to start doing again, which I have done in the past, but I want to start doing again. And with GetResponse, it's built into the platform. So I use GetResponse for my email list and for webinars in the future.
Nice. So you're liking GetResponse?
Yeah, I like GetResponse. The only thing I don't like about GetResponse, just in case somebody's curious, is that I think with Klaviyo, for example, if somebody buys a product, you can tag them, and then you don't have to create a new list to put that customer into. Because what happens with Mailchimp and even GetResponse is that you can have one person in your main list, and then if they buy your product, you have two options. You can get rid of them from the main list, and then put them into a new list of customers, or you can have them in the main list and this separate list with customers. So, and then you get charged double, more or less. You're paying twice for the same customer, which I don't really like, but it's hard to avoid. There's very few uh, email market. What do you call that? CRM? Was it email CRM? I can't remember what the name is. Yeah, CRM applications, software platforms that allow you to do that. So that's one thing about GetResponse, is that they don't allow me to tag a student if they buy different courses, for example. But besides that, I like it. It allows you to have really detailed email welcome flows, or flows if a student does something. So it does everything that you need. It's not overly expensive, lots of features. So yeah, I like GetResponse. I chose it after researching for probably 2 weeks about which one I was going to switch to.
Got it. And I guess just one or two more like in the weeds questions about this. And then so the courses that people are purchasing, is it like a video course? Are they getting an ebook? Are they getting a mix of media formats? So maybe they're getting like group calls or one-on-one calls as well as a video course. Like what's kind of
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
breakdown
so
there?
I would say that I only have one course, which is a video course, and that's my course on accent reduction for Latinos. Because obviously, to do pronunciation, it's you kind of have to see the person. So there, I have that video course, and then the other five courses. Four of the courses are more audio text courses. The main inspiration for my methodology for the courses are basically all the things that polyglots complained about over the years, because I've always been involved in this, I guess, uh, gringo in Latin America community. Maybe not talking a lot, but always just following the guys. And I've also always been involved in the polyglot community. And just over the years, these polyglots would be complaining about, Rosetta Stone, Duolingo, all the self-learning courses. So basically, all my courses are resolving the weaknesses and the drawbacks of a lot of self-learning courses. And for polyglots, the holy grail, which I agree with, maybe some others don't, is audio and text. So the four main courses that I have are all audio and text courses. So basically, the stories that I've written with my students in my classes, because I use a special methodology called TPRS to teach English to Latin Americans. And with that methodology, you create stories with your students. And so I have, who knows, more than 100 stories that I've written for Latinos that reference gringo culture, Latin American culture, and basically just helps Latinos not only learn English, but also understand the gringo mentality, also to understand how gringos view Latin America. And so they learn English, and at the same time, they also learn how to better assimilate into the gringo culture if they're going to go to Canada or the United States, or if they plan on working for a gringo company in Latin America. So yeah, my courses are so one video course, four courses which are audio text, and then one course which is very new, which is just an audio course, which teaches the very basics of grammar, more or less.
Nice. And so they're buying it basically through like a Thrivecart checkout link, and then are you just like emailing it to them, or do you have it hosted on Kajabi or something?
Yeah, so actually, that was the one frustrating thing about WordPress is that it's a little bit difficult to post PDFs. So for the stories, the texts that I have, they're PDFs. And with Thinkific, for example, right now I see a lot of guys are using Podia. Um, and I think there you can also upload. Actually, no, I used Podia for 1 year. Maybe they've changed, but when I was using it, they could only download the PDF. They couldn't actually see the PDF on the platform. So actually, it's kind of hard. There's very few platforms. I think Thinkific, Learn Worlds is another platform where they do allow you to basically embed the PDF directly on the platform. But on WordPress, for the longest time, I couldn't find a solution for letting my students see the PDF directly on the website. But I think 2 years ago, I finally found a plugin which allowed me to embed plugins directly onto the website. So the students, when they buy the course, what happens is they go into the student area, and it looks very similar. If I'm pretty sure everybody who's listening to this has done some sort of self-learning course on Thinkific or Podia, something like that. Similar thing. You have a table of contents. You click on the link, it opens up the page that has the contents. You watch the video, you listen to the audio, or you read the text, and then you click go to the next lesson. So same thing. Students buy the course, they go into the course, and they can basically see the PDF on the screen. I use SoundCloud to embed audio. So I upload my audio to SoundCloud. Then I can embed it directly onto the WordPress page. And so they can read and listen at the same time. And then I also give them the option to download a zip file. And the zip file contains all the texts, all the materials, all the stories that are in the course. So they have a whole bunch of options. For me, it sounds incredible. But obviously, uh, in Latin America, the self-learning, learning by yourself online isn't as popular as it is in Canada, the United States. So sometimes a little bit difficult to convince people in Latin America that what I offer is awesome. And there are literally people in the United Kingdom, Canada, United States complaining about how all the self-learning materials are crap. And you guys basically get the best learning materials ever created for Spanish speakers.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's right on a platform, easy for you to download or use directly on the platform.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So, who is the target market for the courses? Is it more like professional class Latinos that are looking to move? Is it university students? Do you find that there's a particular demographic or like customer avatar that's more commonly, investing in themselves and learning English?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. I would say, well, basically just over the years, I've realized who my target market is. When I first started, it was just, uploading videos to social media and seeing what would catch on. And actually, when I first started doing what I'm doing, my target market was basically young Latino men. I felt like lots of young Latino men, they had no parent, like not great role models in their life to get ahead in the world. So my target market was basically young Latino men. But just because of chance, for whatever reason, Latinas like me a lot more than Latino men. So in the beginning, it was more for young Latino men, and now I would say that I'm most popular with, I would say, young professionals between the age of 25 and 40. A lot of them already have kids. They have like one kid or two kids. I have a few students and a few people who, don't have any kids, but yeah, most of them are either in a relationship, married, and married with kids, and they usually already have a job. I like, for example, my classes and also with my self-learning courses, I would say half of them are in Latin America still. Either they're planning to move to Gringolandia, as I like to call it, or They are planning to work for a gringo company in Latin America. And then, yeah, the other half are people who've already made it to Canada and the United States, and they're just frustrated with their reception with gringo.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co-founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America. And Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information.
They're frustrated that the English that they learned in Latin America, the institutes promised them that they were going to be speaking this English that old gringos would love, and then they go to Gringolandia and they realize that gringos don't understand them. Gringos speak differently. The pronunciation is different than what they learned. So I would say a lot of frustrated young professionals, usually couples in Canada, the United States. Though that would be the other half of my demographic. So yeah, I would say young professionals between 25 and 40 years old from Latin America. And of course, customer avatar is very important. I see it every day talked about on Twitter with the copywriter community. So, sometimes when I feel like I'm not very successful, I kind of question myself and say, well, maybe I'm not doing this customer avatar right. But for now, I would say that's my customer avatar is, yeah, those young professionals. And I would say 70% female.
Young professionals, 70% female.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to sort of weave this into how we were talking a little bit before about there are other popular uh, English teachers for the Spanish speaking market on YouTube. And you referenced how there's kind of like the Mexico guy, the Argentina guy, and people have kind of built brands a little bit around being the gringo in a particular country. And like, I'm the Guatemala guy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I
Yeah.
love Guatemala. I'm here to
Yeah.
show you like whatever.
Yeah, I'm here to show you
Um,
Guatemala is a paradise on earth. And yeah, I don't know why
through the
people don't
eyes of
love
a
it.
gringo. And
Yeah,
then what
exactly.
happens is their audience becomes a primarily Spanish speaking audience, which is it is what it is, but it's a lower value audience just in terms of like buying power
Mhm.
than the same amount of eyeballs from an English speaking audience. And so when people are kind of thinking about what business model to do to monetize this audience, they're kind of like, the problem is that like a lot of your customers are kind of broke. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
to
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
and so it's kind of like an interesting thing to wrestle with because you have to find product market fit. The pricing is definitely totally different. And so you probably have a lot of insights in terms of what it's like to wrestle with a Latin audience and how to build a business for Latinos and cater towards Latinos. What have you kind of learned along the way? Would that be a bit of an accurate assessment?
Yeah, for sure. It's a different culture, and how do I say this without sounding like a dick? Because I always end up sounding like a dick because I'm always so direct. Uh, I think most gringos agree, and even Latinos agree, is that usually Latin America is 10 years behind. So I guess one example I can give anybody listening is I was living in a co-living in Bogota for 6 months last year. And there's a whole bunch of young entrepreneurial Colombians living there, and even from other different countries. And a lot of them were really into um, selling online courses and selling on. Well, actually, no. I think in Mexico right now it's really popular selling on Amazon. So both those things, like selling courses online and selling on Amazon, for gringos, we were already talking about that in 2017, I believe. That was like when it was the first big wave of online courses and selling on Amazon was the FBA craze. And whereas with Latin America, for example, Mexico, it's just starting that wave. So that's the other thing you have to take into account is that if you are a gringo trying to sell to Latinos, is that their sophistication level when it comes to buying online isn't as high as it is for gringos because they don't have as much experience. sometimes it surprises me. I'll have people, send me a message on WhatsApp. Or maybe that's another thing I should talk about is the importance of WhatsApp to selling to Latinos. But yeah, they'll send me a message on WhatsApp and they'll say, it's frustrating for me, but they'll say something like, where do I find information about your courses? Or they'll say, oh, I like everything you said about your course. Where do I buy? And it's frustrating for me because the sales page is very clear. I've done everything. I've followed all the copywriting gurus. I follow all the guys that know anything about making a sales page on Twitter or on YouTube. I do it all to the T. If somebody doubts me, well, yeah, more than welcome to go to my website and say what I'm doing wrong. If you speak Spanish, of course, because everything's in Spanish. But yeah, then they'll ask me questions like, where do I buy the course? And I'll tell them, it's the giant button which says obtener el curso. So there's a button that says get the course. It's green, it's big, you can't miss it. Or they'll ask me a question like, where can I find the price? And they'll be on the exact page that has the price and they'll ask me, okay, I like your course, where's the price? And I'll ask them, have you scrolled down? And if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see big dollar sign, and it has the price of the course. So I think the sophistication levels you have to take into account when you're selling to Latinos. A lot of Latinos, they're just getting introduced to buying things online. I'm not going to say all Latinos. There's obviously lots of Latinos that already know how to buy things online, but there's a lot of them who are just making their first purchase online. They're very wary about buying online. Obviously, there's lots of scams in Latin America. So Latinos, I think a lot of the guys that listen to this, they know they have experience with Latino women. They know that they're very wary of a new man because they don't know who he is, all the danger that there is in Latin America for a woman. So very similar with selling to Latinos. They're very wary about scams. So they'll ask a lot of questions, basically, that are trying to figure out if you're a scam or not. And then many of them have never really bought anything online. So they don't really know how it works. They don't know what happens once they give the credit card. And I was really excited to meet him. Maybe you'll do an interview with him in the future. You might know who he is. Jamie, I think Jamie Ramos. He's from Mexico. He lives in Monterrey. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did a few.
we've met up in person.
Okay,
We
yeah,
met
yeah.
in Portugal.
Okay, yeah. So I did a few copywriting consultation sessions with him because again, copywriting for gringos, there's lots of guys that teach copywriting, but copywriting in Latin America, there's very few people that do it and very few people who know how to do it. And for me, I haven't had as much success as I would like to have. So I always kind of think maybe there's something that I'm doing that Latinos don't like. So when I finally found Jamie, probably in Spanish, the name is Jaime, uh, I was excited because I thought, well, here's a Latino. He's going to tell me what I'm doing wrong. And so, yeah, he definitely changed some things about my copy. But I remember one thing he told me when we were reviewing my email flow. He was telling me your emails are too long, and like you have all this information about how to buy, which buttons to press. And the thing is, yeah, people don't need this. They don't need it. And at the time, I agreed with him. I just said, okay, you're Jaime. I believe you. You're Latino. You're Mexican. You probably know more than I. But then, I still have these same questions. And just my own personal opinion, I believe if you're selling to a Latino market, you have to give step by step instructions. Yeah, maybe somebody like Jaime disagrees with me, but I find that if you don't give step by step instructions about how to do it, you're going to get a lot of confused people because for many of them, they've never bought something online before. So I would say that's probably my biggest challenge is just trying to keep my copy, my sales, my marketing as simple as possible, but at the same time, giving as many details as possible to avoid those typical questions of, oh, where do I buy it? Is it a monthly payment? Do I pay once? Uh, all the questions that you can usually find on a sales page. And for most gringos, they would just read all the information and they get the information. But for whatever reason in Latin America, it's not as common for them or they're not used to it, reviewing all the information before asking a question. And then maybe just a last quick thing about Latinos in general. Yeah, Latino culture, it's more act first, then think. rather than think and then act. So for them, when they find like a course that they like, yeah, they're just going to click on the WhatsApp button on the website and start asking questions. They're not going to think, maybe I should read all the information on the sales page before I ask any questions, because probably the man who created the sales page spent 4 months creating it and compiling all this information. I'm pretty sure he's thought about his customers and put all the information here. But no, in the Latin American market, it's more act first, then think. So what I find with a lot of competitors and a lot of people who sell successfully in Latin America is that they usually hire some sort of sales representative, like somebody on the phone or somebody on WhatsApp to answer all the basic questions that they get from their Latin American customers. Because, yes, from my own experience, they're usually going to ask a question before they actually read the information, which for me as a Canadian, which comes from a different culture, it's a little bit frustrating. And then I guess the last thing about Latinos, of course, WhatsApp. I think most gringos that live in Latin America, they already know that Latinos use WhatsApp a lot. So if you're going to be doing customer service, you got to make sure that you have a WhatsApp number or some sort of messaging system. I would just say WhatsApp. You got to use WhatsApp if you're going to be selling to Latinos. And with WhatsApp, that's how they're going to contact you, and that's how they're going to get the information that they need. So yeah, those are some of the basic things that I've discovered selling to Latinos. I'm pretty sure there's more stuff, but yeah, those are the basics for me.
How do you do like automations in WhatsApp? Because it's so tied to like one phone number and you can't have it open in like more than two or three windows. Is I guess you like if you were to have an assistant or something like that handling the messages, do you have an idea of how to do that?
Actually, I still haven't set up an automation system. I do know that they exist, and I've seen them tons. I think you've seen them tons as well in Latin America. If you make a reservation at a restaurant, they'll have the automation messages saying, what time and what location, stuff like that. I still haven't done any research into WhatsApp automation systems. I do know they exist. It's definitely something I want to look into. I know they also exist for Facebook. Facebook is also really common. Maybe another thing for anybody who's thinking about marketing to Latinos is that Facebook, while as for gringos, it's kind of dying off. It's more of a boomer social network. It's still very popular and still widely used in Latin America. So I hardly interact with my Facebook page, but at the same time, I have a lot more traction with my Facebook page than my Instagram account, which is funny because I love Instagram when it comes to my social media networks. Instagram is my favorite, but when it comes to growing,
Hmm.
I would say I'm more
Facebook's bigger.
yeah, Facebook is it's easier to get traction, it's easier to go viral, it's easier to get people sharing. Whereas with Instagram, it's a constant battle to try to get a video to go viral, at least for me in Latin America. But yeah, so with
Right. People
automation
still get their
messages,
memes on Facebook.
yeah. It's incredible how popular Facebook remains in Latin America. But yeah, so there's automation with Instagram, there's automation with Facebook, there's automation with WhatsApp. I don't know how it works exactly. I do know there's some basic automation. For example, on my Facebook page, I do have a basic automation set up for basically if somebody tries to send me a message on Facebook, they automatically get a message which says, unfortunately, Profe isn't here at the moment. If you are looking for information about his classes or courses, visit profecal.com. If you want his best advice for learning English, here's a link to his very short 30-page ebook, which gives the best advice to Latinos who are learning English. So there's simple automations that you can set up on, I think, on WhatsApp, on Instagram, on Facebook, where you don't need any extra software or anything. But you can also pay money, I believe, to get more advanced automation setup. I think one of the most popular, I don't know if it's good or if it's bad, but I know one that is popular has the octopus mascot is ManyChat, I believe it's called. And I have seen other guys in my market use it with Latinos with success.
Cool, cool. I wanted to come back a bit about the polymath community and about the gringos and Latin America community, and just kind of hear who have been some of your biggest inspirations, and just kind of chop it up a little bit about who you like, and maybe you can put me on to some new people.
Some
I guess
guys that
maybe
you, yeah.
yeah. Um, Maybe we could start with the polymath stuff. I've always been a big fan of that. That was one of my big inspirations. Even when I only spoke English back in the day, I was watching Benny Lewis, Fluent in 3 Months. Uh, Tim Ferriss was talking a lot about learning multiple languages as well. I imagine you were a big Benny Lewis fan back in the day.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely Benny Lewis. Because what happened was in university, I took 3 semesters of basic Spanish, and I was always the best student. Well, yeah, Vance, you're gonna know in Canada, I think we still use percentage. So I had like a 93% average in all of my Spanish courses in university. Which who knows, maybe it's not saying that much, but still, I know I was the best student in my Spanish classes. But after finishing university, I still couldn't speak Spanish, even though I also had a Mexican girlfriend for a majority of my university life. So I remember I broke up with my girlfriend. She's my first girlfriend. We lasted for 3 years. I was heartbroken, as the Latinos would say. I had lots of tusa, and yeah, Benny Lewis is actually probably one of the guys that kind of helped me get out of the funk. I would say the polyglot community with Benny Lewis and the other guy, who knows, you might not know him. His name is Ida Ness. And actually, if you don't know him, Vance, you might like him because I think he lives in Portugal right now. He also loves Brazil. He has courses on accent reduction for, I believe, Portuguese, Spanish, I think French and German as well. So, and his main focus was
Mimic
it.
method.
Yeah, the mimic. Yeah, exactly, mimic method. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I bought some of his courses before, and he's probably the polyglot that focuses the most on good pronunciation. So I always liked him for that. So yeah, I would say Benny Lewis and Ida Hosenes. I saw some of their videos and they really helped me get out of my funk, and they really helped me to just start going on to language exchanges and talking to Latinas in order to start actually speaking Spanish. So yeah, those were the first guys. And then getting into the community more, there's a whole bunch of guys that I found very inspiring. I would say Ollie Richards. I think he's an inspiration for me, not just because he's a polyglot, but also because he did the CELTA like I did, which is the teaching English certificate. Then he did the next course, which is the Delta, which is a little bit more advanced. And now he also has a very successful, basically polyglot company. I
Hmm.
think he writes as long as with collaborators. They write stories, they record audio, and they basically sell these stories on Amazon. And then he also has more advanced and very in depth courses, which cover the most frustrating aspects of grammar in a language. So, for example, I'm learning Russian right now. So, the cases in Russian are super difficult. So, I bought his course, which taught the cases, but within a story, which I found very interesting. So, he's an inspiration, not
Hmm.
only because he's a polyglot, but also because he's successful, selling self learning
Yes. Well,
courses.
I didn't know about this guy, but he goes hard on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah, he's very professional now. I think he started out just regular guy a few years ago, but he's gotten really good lately. So Ollie Richards, I think there's a guy called Alexander Argyles. I think that's his name. Now he's not popular, but he's a really huge polyglot nerd, and he has a lot of really good videos. They're not super popular videos. They're really only popular with people who are really nerdy about learning languages, but at the same time, he gives really good advice on YouTube about how to learn languages. And I think he's a university professor. So yeah, he's got some good videos on YouTube. His name is difficult to spell, so if you're trying to look for it right now, you might be
Think
hard
I
to find.
found him. I
Okay,
think I
yeah.
found him. Yeah,
So anyway,
it's Arguelles, the last
yeah,
name.
exactly. So there's him. And let me see. Is there another one? I can't remember his name, but there's an Italian polyglot.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
no, Federico.
Yeah, I can't remember what his name is, but yeah, yeah,
Federico. It starts with a letter A. I think
yeah,
his
but
last
yeah, I
name.
think I think he's a professional translator, so I think that's his day job, and he also makes videos about learning languages on the side. So he is a big inspiration. Actually, a good one for your listeners who are learning Spanish, just because of the way he teaches, but he's a big inspiration for me when it comes to teaching languages. He has a great YouTube channel for learning languages. His name is Pablo, and he has a channel on YouTube called Dreaming Spanish. So I really agree with a lot of the things that he talks about, and I really like his methodology.
Hmm.
So
Do
yeah,
you watch yourself like watch Spanish language learning videos, not only to learn, but then also to sort of like copy their techniques to use for teaching English?
Well, yeah, because I've been influenced by a lot of the guys on Twitter who teach, teach business, start like how to start a business. And one of the big things that a lot of the guys always say is that you got to be doing competitor research. You got to find out what your competitors are doing and see if you can do something better. And that was the inspiration for a lot of my courses. Was I had all these polyglots complaining about all these self-learning courses, and they did some things good, but there were a lot of things about them that were crap. So just like they would say on Twitter, in the making money sphere, is okay, you have people basically telling you what they want in a course, go out and do it. And I knew how to do it. So yeah, for me, I'm constantly looking at people who teach Russian, people who teach Spanish, people who teach English, people who teach French, just seeing if there's something that they're doing with how they teach that I can implement in my own methodology to make it even better for Latinos. I just see it as competitive research. I try not to copy what others do, and but at the same time, I try to take aspects of what others do and implement it into my own methodology, because my methodology is very unique. It's only for Latinos. It wouldn't work for Russians. It wouldn't work for Chinese. It wouldn't work for French people. It only works for Spanish speakers, and specifically for Spanish speakers from Latin America. But yeah, I'm constantly doing competitive research and seeing what others are doing.
Hmm. By the way, do you find that your customers are like overwhelmingly from one or two countries, or is it a good mix in term not just customers, but like fan base? Like, is it overwhelmingly Mexico, or is it more Colombia, or a bit of a
I would,
mix in the region?
yeah, my main countries. Number one is gonna be Colombia. Number two would be Venezuelans, but obviously mostly Venezuelans that live outside of Venezuela. So they live in Chile, they live in Florida, they live in Georgia, they live in New Jersey, they live in Canada, wherever it is. So I would say number one, Colombia. Number two, Venezuelans, and number three, Mexicans. But for me, it makes sense because the Spanish that I speak was very influenced by Mexicans first, and then afterwards by Colombians and Venezuelans. So, of course, Latinos know that I'm not from those countries, but when Latinos hear me speak Spanish, a lot of them can tell that, oh, he said that word or he pronounced it that way. So, he must have experience in Mexico, must have experience in Colombia. So I find that just because of the way I speak and also my attitude, because obviously there's a general Latino culture, but each Latino culture is a little bit different. So I find for whatever reason, Colombians and Venezuelans, they really resonate with my Latino personality. Whereas it seems like Chileans, Argentinians, Uruguayans, they really don't like me that much. They don't hate me, but I just get this feeling that they might see a video of mine and they just think, oh, this guy, one, he doesn't speak British English, so I don't really want to learn any English which isn't British English. And two, oh, he has an accent which is more Mexican Colombian. He doesn't really talk about us that much, so I prefer to learn from somebody who has more Chilean influence. And I have seen that. I've seen, English teachers who are really successful in the Argentina market just because one, they teach British English, and because two, they spend a lot of time in Argentina, or they are Argentinian, or they speak with an Argentinian accent. And I also know teachers that live in Chile, and they have lots of students. All the students are Chilean, just because I guess the Chileans trust them more because they speak with a more of a Chilean accent, or they are Chilean, and of course they teach British English. So I think the main reason that I attract Mexicans, Colombians, and Venezuelans is just because most of my experiences in those countries, my Spanish is very influenced by those countries, and also just my Latino attitude. Because when you speak another language, you kind of speak like where you learn the language. So I guess my attitude is more Colombian, Venezuelan, Mexican. So that's my hypothesis.
Fair enough. Yeah, so many good language learning professors and stuff out there. Just to come back to that, and
Yeah.
then who are some of your favorite guys in terms of I guess just like traveling YouTubers and just like interesting people doing interesting stuff online. I kind of at the confluence of entrepreneurship, travel, digital nomads, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I think the only guy who kind of mixes it perfectly, yeah, probably I would say Jake, because yeah, Jake talks a little bit about making money, maybe not a lot, but at the same time, he also talks about conquistando. Latin America. So I would say when it comes to a mixture, maybe the only one I really know that I can think of is Jake. But when it comes to just like pure traveling, of course, Vance was a huge inspiration and just somebody like to follow. just the persona that he created on Twitter, always loved hearing what he had to say, no matter how silly it was. So I would say Vance, Scotian, of course, on the forum. Remember reading his stories, and also just as a Canadian, I knew where he was from. I also, well, I grew up basically where he works. So it's kind of interesting to hear somebody that was more from my culture talk about it, because I follow a lot of Americans, and for me, Canadians, Americans, were not that different. But at the same time, if somebody's Canadian, you can kind of connect with them a little bit more because they're, just, it's our culture. So Scotian was another one. I guess recently, in the last few years, another guy that I like watching on YouTube is Bald and Bankrupt. And then
Yep.
the other one, very new, he's kind of a crazy South African, is Kurt Gatz.
Yep.
Yeah. So he kind of blew up. He just just kind of like your typical guy that doesn't know anything, but people like him. Like just kind of goes to a country, doesn't know diddly squat about the place, but walks around with a camera in his hand. I remember when he went to Medellin, he's walking around downtown. He just had a camera in his hand, and he walks down one road, and he says, "Oh, well, this looks a little bit dangerous. I think I better turn around." Yeah, yeah, buddy. I know which part of Medellin you're in. Yeah, you better turn around because you can get robbed. So for me, it's always funny watching Kurt walk around Latin America, and you're always thinking, "Oh, I'm surprised this guy doesn't get robbed." And actually, Bald and Bankrupt, he's doing a trip from Peru to Venezuela right now, and he went to Bogota last week, and he's walking around Centro, downtown Bogota, with a camera in his hand. And I was just the entire video, I was thinking, "Oh, he's gonna get robbed any second now." Bogota is not the place you want to be walking around with a camera in your hand, but somehow he survived without getting stabbed or without getting robbed. So when it comes to like travel YouTubers, the only guys that I really like watching videos of are Bald and Bankrupt, Kurt Gatz. There's another guy, maybe not as well known by I guess the audience on Twitter, is I think his name is Sabbatical. I believe he's American. He doesn't really look, yeah, Sabbatical. I think it's
Yeah, yeah. I
S.
think I've seen
Yeah,
this on YouTube.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like he just seems like a regular guy. Like he seems like a guy that should be working as a barista in Starbucks somewhere in the United States. But at the same time, like he doesn't really seem like a soy boy or anything like that. He looks like a soy boy, but he isn't a soy boy. And yeah, for me, he does interesting videos, very similar to Bald and Bankrupt and Kurt Gatz, where he just goes to a place. He's interested. I think he went to El Salvador a few weeks ago to find out if Bukele, what he's doing, is real or if it's fake news or
Hmm.
whatever. So
Yeah,
I
that
like
popped
his
up on
videos
my
too.
timeline. I gotta watch
Yeah.
it though, but yeah, that popped up for me.
Yeah, so those are some of the travel guys on YouTube that I follow. So yeah, those are the main ones. I would say Vans. I've been following Jake for a long time. Actually, I forgot. Yeah, Naughty Nomad. I would say I didn't follow him as much, but yeah, Naughty Nomad was another guy that yeah I was following a little bit. I I like his yacht lifestyle and just sailing around. It seems like a dream.
Where do you think things are going in terms of just like this online kind of like YouTuber space or the gringo and Latin America space? It's kind of like the confluence of um, a lot of different sort of industries at the same time. You have digital nomads, you have sort of language learners, you have all these sort of different groups and different formats, be it YouTube, be it Twitter, things like that. Do you have any idea of like where things are going and sort of a sense of the direction?
I'm going to say no, and I don't want to act like I know more than I do, because yeah, I would say every single week I'm confused. I'll give you some examples. For example, I would say last July, one of my videos on I started TikTok went viral. And I was like, oh, cool. All right. Like I got a whole bunch of followers on TikTok. Awesome. I'm just going to keep on making videos like this, and I'm going to get a whole bunch of free traffic from TikTok. So I make similar videos. I'm still making more or less the same videos. And I've had like maybe, 3, 4 other videos kind of go viral. But besides that, I'm getting maybe an average of 1,000 views per video, which, not bad, but it's not great. And then a few weeks later on Instagram, different video. This is actually teaching Latinos how to say osea, because, gomelas, fresas, Latinas, they'll say osea, osea. So I was like, okay, this is how you say osea, like a fresa in Gringolandia. So I taught them like. For whatever reason, that video went viral on Instagram, but it didn't go viral on TikTok. And after spending maybe 3 years with, I think I had like 47,000 followers on Instagram. I was like 3 years kind of in Instagram purgatory. I wasn't gaining followers, and I was slowly bleeding followers on Instagram. Then all of a sudden, one video, I didn't do anything special in this video, nothing special. But for whatever reason, this video goes viral, and I go from, I think, 47 followers on Instagram all the way to 112,000 followers on Instagram. And I'm thinking, oh, finally, like Instagram has stopped with this bullshit, and they're finally going to push me to Latinos. Because that's one thing that's always been frustrating for me is I'll get Latinos when I'm in Latin America. They'll meet me for the first time, and the thing they'll tell me is, I'm surprised you don't have more followers. Like, your content is so good. You teach stuff that nobody else teaches. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of shake my head and say, I really have no answer. I don't know why. Like, I really have no clue. Because sometimes I'll see people on YouTube or social media that are in the same market as me. They'll create videos which are really, really lazy, or they'll have really bad Spanish. Because, sometimes I'll think, my Spanish isn't perfect. Maybe I'm not as successful because my Spanish isn't good. But then I'll see a gringo with way worse Spanish than me making videos like, hola a todos, hoy voy a enseñarte cómo decir adiós en inglés. I'm thinking, holy shit, that accent is horrible. But the guy has, 100,000 views on YouTube or 100,000 views on Instagram, and he's getting those views consistently. And that's another thing too. On Twitter, I'll see, guys that are in Latin America, and they're giving advice on how to make TikTok videos or Instagram videos. And they'll be saying, hey guys, you want to go viral on TikTok? This is what you got to do. And, I'm glad that they're giving out information, but just from my experience, I've tested out a lot of stuff. A lot of, going viral on social media, getting leads or getting views on social media. A lot of it just seems like luck. And there's some people that don't seem to get the luck, even though they're fantastic teachers, or they make, fantastically edited videos. And you really have no answers.
You're doing pretty well. I mean, I didn't even realize you were this big on Instagram. So you have like 111,000 followers right now on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at it from my personal account, and I can see that like some Latina girls that I know are actually following you.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah. I'm making inroads. But
yeah. And you're putting out videos like pretty much every day, and they're doing like quite well, like 1,000+ likes and stuff like that. So
yeah. I think that's a big thing. Maybe just general life advice, maybe for a young guy who's struggling in the business that they're doing, is just so you're going to be frustrated. You're going to have no idea why somebody else who you think is not as intelligent as you or not putting out as good as content as you is doing better than you. And I think just one thing that I've gotten better at is just ignoring all the noise and just sticking to your mission. And my mission is to create the best methodology for Latinos and make the best courses, and just keep on trying to find ways to get that methodology into the hands of as many Latinos as possible. So that's why I say I can't really predict the future of social media, because I am so confused. I have no idea sometimes why a video goes viral. Like another video that went viral on Facebook but didn't go viral on Instagram or TikTok was about how phrasal verbs, I don't know, like probably for most gringos, they don't really give a shit about phrasal verbs, but it's very difficult for Latinos to learn phrasal verbs because it's just a very interesting aspect of English. For lots of Latinos, they get really, really frustrated with phrasal verbs. So I made a video just saying, hey, phrasal verbs exist, but there's also more or less phrasal verbs in Spanish. So if you can differentiate between dejar and dejarde, then you really have no excuse to be whining and complaining about phrasal verbs, because you've already mastered similar things in Spanish. So I made this video. It didn't go viral on Instagram. It didn't go viral on TikTok. But for whatever reason on Facebook, it had a whole bunch of shares. And I really like, I couldn't tell you why. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell, some Twitter influencer who focuses on going viral on TikTok why it was successful. Obviously, if there's somebody who who focuses on going viral on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok that wants to look at my videos and try to tell me why one goes viral, one doesn't, I would love to hear. But I really have no answers as to how Instagram works. Obviously, on YouTube, you can have really well edited videos that can help you. There's ways to, script your videos so they become more successful. But I also know tons of guys who spend so much time into making great videos on YouTube and they never get any traction. So yeah, like I really don't know what to tell anybody about social media. But maybe one thing talking about, gringos in Latin America, Latinos in Gringolandia, just looking back at history, I just feel like geographically we're so close. I feel like eventually in 100 years, gringos and Latinos are going to keep on mixing and mixing. And who knows, there might be a new Spanglish language, which is spoken in Mexico. And that's kind of my guess is just Latinos and gringos are going to become more interconnected and the cultures are going to become more intertwined. And yeah, things are going to change. Because, Spanish is just the bastard son of Latin from the Romans. So I'm guessing that, uh, the Americas are going to have a bastard version of English Spanish in the future just because of the geographical proximity. And there's more people like me, like you, Latinos helping Latinos in Gringolandia. There's basically people connecting the two different cultures together. And, eventually there's going to be a synthesis between the cultures, I believe.
I definitely think that Spanish and Portuguese should make like a concerted effort to like coalesce to, or like unify towards one common language to sort of for a couple of reasons. I mean, for economic integration and then maybe be like a bigger superpower that can like go up against like China and India a little bit better, right? Because then you'd have, more like 800 million speakers, something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
And
But
you
yeah.
could do it like bit by bit because they have like official governing bodies that govern the language, right?
Mhm.
And so you just need these governing bodies to just like, I don't know, maybe like every 10 years to just bring together like 100
Oh,
words at a time or
I like,
something like
yeah, bit by bit.
that.
It's like the boiling the frog where they don't even notice that the language is changing, but it slowly changes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, and there's been like examples in the past where the Portuguese language academy, whatever it's called, there was spelling or grammar differences between Portugal and Brazil, and they kind of got together and agreed on like what was going to be the official spelling going forward, and they had to agree not just on one piece of grammar, but like on a couple different aspects of things. Like I think something was about accents too. It's easy enough to look up. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so these bodies can sort of like get together and sort of decide things a little bit and it'd be yeah. So I and the other part of what you're saying, I definitely agree with too. That there's just gonna be a lot more integration between North and South America over time.
But yeah, but I guess the one aspect you probably know about it, but the one aspect about Latino culture, and Latinos will say this too. So who knows if there's some Latino who listens to this for some reason and thinks it's, prejudice or something. It's just Latinos will say it themselves. But like the worst enemy of a Latino is another Latino, and so that's one thing. Like Lati- Latinos Latinos hate each other. It seems like for me, I love all Latinos. Like I don't have any problems with Argentinians. I have no problems with Mexicans. But yeah, you talk to Argentinians about Mexicans, or Mexicans about Argentinians, Colombians about Peruvians, Ecuadorians about Colombians. And there just seems to be so much hatred between each other. And actually, I watched an interesting video, I think 2 years ago. There's a guy that talked about the geography of Latin America. Maybe you guys, anybody listening to this, has seen it, but it really talked about how the geography of Latin America really stops it from integrating because, there's so many mountains that separate people from each other. Like Colombia, for example, before the airplane was invented or before this world of the internet came to be, most Colombians were separated from each other. That's why Cali is very different from Bogota, and Bogota is very different from Medellin, and the coast, the Caribbean coast, is so different from the rest of the countries. It's because they were so geographically isolated. So I think even if the languages were integrated, it's going to take a long time to get Latinos to stop hating each other and to try to find a way to geographically integrate Latinos into one cohesive group. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I think it's easier now with social media to make those connections, but still a challenge. But even though one thing that's interesting, I'm in Buenos Aires, for example, and you talk to older porteños, people from Buenos Aires, and they'll use a lot of vocabulary which younger generations no longer use. So I think I went to get empanadas a few days ago from a place, and there was a 60-year-old Argentinian woman, and she said, "Oh, hoy es mi, like, no, el martes es mi, no, los martes son mi día fango, something like that." And I was like, ¿qué es fango? And she said, oh, libre. I was like, okay, so like fango, I don't think I got the right word, but anyways, like fango is libre. So then I talked to a younger Argentinian girl yesterday and asked her, so what's this word that they use to say libre in Argentina? And I was trying to explain it to her because I forgot what the word was. And she finally told me, and then she said, yeah, but that's something that older, Argentinians will say. And I am finding that it seems like the Spanish speaking Latinos, they're starting to really exchange vocabulary and they're starting to kind of integrate their Spanish into each other. So I think Mexico is probably the most culturally influential Latin American country, even though geographically it's probably the most separated from the Southern American, Latin American countries. But you find like a lot of Mexican words are starting to make their way to Colombia or even Argentina. So I think a possibility is, yeah, just like you're kind of saying, but in your case with the governing organizations, in my case, I'm saying more just
Yeah, just
a
definitely
grassroots
organic. Yeah.
change. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they all watch each other's movies and novellas and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think there'll be a grassroots change, and because of the internet, the dialects that are spoken, the different
Music.
vocabulary will kind of disappear. And yeah, because of reggaeton, for example, there'll be more and more Latinos speaking this more urban Spanish. And yeah, the old differences between the different dialects are maybe not completely disappear, but they're gonna become less accentuated.
Yep, totally agree. We'll kind of start wrapping up because I do have a call actually in like 15 minutes. But
Mhm.
Profe Kyle, I would definitely appreciate your opinion on this because you're a longtime observer of the space. What would you like to see more of from My Latin Life and from other, I guess, creators in the, I guess, like Gringo and Latin America space or digital nomad space, for lack of a better term?
I think no, actually, I think it's kind of funny. I think you guys are getting really professionalized, like looking at Jake, and I think Jake and you are probably the most professionalized, but just guys are getting smarter about how they, the content that they're putting out. And I think like the content that you're putting out really helps. I think Jake as well. It really helps those gringos who might have never thought about going to Latin America take that step and taking a plane to Mexico or Colombia or Brazil and just taking that first step. So like I like your content. At the same time, I know it is more focused towards like, yeah, getting those guys that are scared of going to Latin America for whatever reason, or maybe just abandoning that gringo life. So I think what you guys are doing is really good. But maybe just for me personally, the things that I would like to see, I just like the details. So for me, I always like knowing the different foods that you can find. Like I'm always surprised, for example, the Colombian food isn't the greatest, but I'm constantly learning about new dishes which are in Colombia. So for me, I just like the little details. I know it's probably more profitable for Jake or yourself to talk about getting citizenship and stuff like that. Of course, I'm not successful enough to even start contemplating it, and I don't really know if I want to spend 6 months a year in Paraguay. Even it's not a bad country; I've been there before. But I guess just for me as a Latin American nerd, I always really like it when you guys, you, Vance, Jake, LatAm Papi, whoever it is, either they focus on the crazy stories that they have, their experiences with the culture, or just even talking about the little things like the drinks, the schedule, the dishes that Latinos have, because that always gives me more inspiration to keep on finding new things to try and to explore in the different countries that I go to.
Okay, little details, prices.
Yeah, price is a big. Like for example, I want to go to Brazil. So obviously, there's lots of guys going to Brazil. I think I'm going to go either in a month or 2 months to Brazil for the first time. But I'm still a little bit confused about the prices. I don't know if it's the same as Colombian prices. I don't know if it's more expensive. I don't know if it's cheaper. I don't know if there's a difference between northern Brazil and southern Brazil with prices. So there's stuff like that. And of course, I would say Brazil is the most unknown of the Latin American countries. It's not as well explored as the other ones. But information like that, just knowing what do people drink in the morning, where are places to go if you want to get a beer, how much do groceries cost in general in the different cities or in different regions. Stuff like that I really appreciate, and it helps me plan out my trips.
Sweet, sweet. Well, we'll definitely keep on doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Profe Kyle, man, thank you for joining us for this episode. It was definitely a fun one, and it's always good to catch up with you. Um, I guess this would be the time in the episode where you could direct the audience to your website and just whatever stuff you want them to take
Yeah.
a look at.
So of course, I don't really do anything for gringos. My main audience are Latinos, but if you're a gringo and you want to see what I do just because you're curious, yeah, all of my social media is Profe Kyle, and my website is profekyle.com. So yeah, if you want to check it out, maybe there's something that you think you could give me some pointers on when it comes to social media or my email copy or my courses or whatever it is. Yeah, go ahead. Just put a comment, send me a message. I appreciate it. And of course, if you just want to check things out because you have a lot of Latino friends or you have some Latina friends, let's say, and they're learning English, well, yeah, then send them my way and I'll help them learn English for sure. So Profe Kyle for all of my social media. Profekyle.com is my website.
Sweet, man. Yeah, definitely really interesting what you're doing in terms of explaining North American culture to Latin Americans. And it's just really funny how you're sort of kind of operating between the two worlds. So always great to speak with you, and we'll definitely be supporting each other going forward.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you very much, Vance, for the opportunity to talk with you. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, sir. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guest today was Profe Kyle. That's spelled Profe Kyle. You can find him on Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. Kyle, thanks again, man.
Yeah, thank you, Vance.